Now the other side, when they saw this coming, when they saw Saul Price, the founder of the big box discount store, take on Walmart to organize the workers at Walmart, the executives in Bentonville, Arkansas, were terrified. I mean, it's one thing to have some labor unions try to do it, but Saul Price, he's the father of the whole business. He knows exactly where the warts are, where the vulnerabilities are, what the spoilage rate is, what the turnover is. And so there's a whole strategy on this in here. And so each one of them, Joe Jameo is a trial lawyer in Houston, very successful one. He's a part of the Forbes 400. He decides that his dream was to open up small claims courts for millions of Americans and show them how to use it free, provide free legal advice. So when they get ripped off $500 here, $800 there, $200 by a bank here, they know what to do. So all of a sudden, these millions of cases are moving into the small claims court, which no longer are just used by collection agencies against people. They were designed to give people a simple, inexpensive way to get justice. They usually cap the claim, say, $1,500 or $2,000. So each one of them had their particular insights. Peter Lewis, who had headed Progressive Insurance, his mission was to go after the insurance companies because they didn't focus on loss prevention. You know, they really should focus on preventing fires, not just insuring against fires. Their function should be to prevent what they insure happening because it makes more money for them. But unfortunately, they've become investment companies, not insurance companies. They really, let's put it this way, they would rather charge you $1,000 premium and pay you a $500 claim than charge you a $500 premium and pay you a $250 claim.
Oh, wow.
Why? More money for investment income. So they lost that early 19th century interest in loss prevention when boiler safety for the big factories, which is a big danger in those days, they had to meet insurance company standards. And some of you may know that there's a company in Hartford called Hartford Boiler Insurance Company. But they moved from an engineering loss prevention into just a financial company, and they have no interest as long as they can get higher premiums. So he goes after them in a dramatic congressional hearing. So there's a lot in here about how power operates in this country, how it misbehaves, how to deconstruct and challenge it, how to turn it around. And you know, most books who postulate in fiction going after the bad guys or the corrupt guys, it's a bottom-up. The mass farmers mobilize, elect people, governors, senators, discipline the banks, railroad companies, so on. This is a top-down, bottom-up. Top-down, bottom-up. Because look, I've been around this country so many times, I can't count. And I look in people's eyes, and I see the battles they've gone through, not just personal grievances like accidents or surgery they couldn't pay for, but they try to improve the community a little bit, the neighborhood, and they're pushed down. You know, they're disrespected, excluded, hooted. You go to a town meeting or a city council meeting, they play this technical jargon against you, parliamentary procedures, you know. People feel blocked, and it occurred to me, what if they had more media? What if they had more money? What if they had more organizers? Every area of the country, including this one, has a tiny number of very rich, older people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who have a different perspective on life, who are very discouraged about where the country is sliding, and who want to look at their grandchildren in the eye. And they don't want to leave this country in this kind of shape. And I've talked to a lot of these 17. I've known half of them. And I've never seen more discouraged people. And they're multi-billionaires about the state of the country. It's like it's frozen. And it exists for the service of fewer and fewer giant multinational corporations who grew in this country on the backs of American workers, who went to Washington for bailouts when they got in trouble, and who were helped by the U.S. Marines when they got in trouble abroad. And now they have no allegiance to our country at all. They're perfectly willing to develop the architecture of the WTO and NAFTA, and then say to us, well, to meet the global competition, we're going to have to close down the Kenosha, Wisconsin engine plant where there are 800 workers for Chrysler, that plant that won one design award after another, and send it to Mexico. Sorry. Workers have no say. Nobody has any say. They have no allegiance to this country other than to control it and ship its jobs and industries to communist and fascist regimes with the help of your Department of Commerce and other tax gimmicks. Just imagine, who among us of a certain age, 35 years ago, would have thought that we were deindustrializing our society and sending it to China, which knows how to keep its workers in its place, don't they? At 50 cents an hour, working with modern capital equipment. Quite different from the theory of free trade, comparative advantage. It's absolute advantage. Labor, capital, know-how, equipment, all can be now in one place. It's not like in the old days you had British textiles for Portuguese wine, and they both benefited. Because at that time Portugal couldn't produce textiles as efficient, and Britain couldn't produce wine as efficient. So a lot of these, there's a lot of dialogue in the book. Someone asked me how long it took me to write this book. I said, after 40 years of experience, I wrote it in 9 months. It just came out of me. And all of us who are involved in civic activity have this story in their heads. What if we had this? What if we had that? What if we had this? Whether it's a local controversy or a local mission or a state, national, or international. Now there's some, Leslie Stahl read this on her vacation, and she wrote me a letter saying she thought it was engrossing, creative, and funny. And I said, well, given the size of this, I'll take all three. But I made it large print first. I want older people to read this. Print's too small these days. But the important thing is, it's a form of literary, it's not a novel. It's called a work of political imagination, or some literary people tell me it's called a practical utopia. I call it the answer to Ayn Rand, among other things. The book has the kind of imagination that you will say, I can do this. I've got this imagination. I've gone through these battles, not on this scale, because this is a national movement, but I've gone on different scales, or I've been part of certain national movements. And if we don't liberate our imagination, we just can't envision. And contrary to everything people say about the internet, we're connected to the world, I don't think we have a surplus of imagination. If we did, Congress would not be the best money could buy. As William Rogers, what's the name of the Oklahoma? Will Rogers, sorry. As Will Rogers once said, I had, and also the best money can, the best Congress money can rent. It's much more flexible. Now, to give you an illustration, today, as we speak, the Senate is debating the Wall Street reform bill. And everybody knows that they've got to touch certain bases. They've got to deal with derivatives, too big to fail, the Consumer Protection Agency, the bond rating fiascos of Standard & Poor, and so forth. And they should be dealing with the tax on speculation. So I believe the tax system should tax first that which we as a society like the least or dislike the most. So we should first tax pollution. We should tax speculated derivatives on Wall Street, which are huge revenue because they just churn trillions of dollars of trading. But they don't have a tax provision in this bill.